Hi, Richard here. So, a friend recently came up to me and asked how to evaluate a job offer from a startup because it's a lot different than going to corporate. There's a lot of more moving parts. You have to evaluate equity, you have to evaluate potential growth, and even if the startup fails, for example. So, I'm going to make this video covering a few of these concepts that you should think about when you're evaluating your own job offer. It's going to be hopefully a short one. It's going to be a whiteboard session, no fancy editing. I'm just going to be going straight into what I think you should think about when you're evaluating your startup offer. I had to do this multiple times. I had to talk to mentors, angel friends, work colleagues, and even just normal friends. And I kind of got a few concepts that I think you should think about. So I'm going to go straight into it. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe if this video is helpful to you. So let's get into it. First thing, so it's really obvious, it's a bit corny, but it's just going to be said, it's your personal preference. So the reason why I'm bringing up your personal interest is because it's important. The number one thing I think you should think about is your risk appetite. So you have to think about how risky you are. If you're a property investor or you like to put money into the bank and just leave it there, your risk appetite is probably really low. And a startup requires someone who's a bit more riskier, who likes living a bit more on the edge with a chance of potentially making a lot of money, potentially losing it all. Just a bit more of someone who has a bit more of a risk appetite to take on a challenge. And you have these phases in a variety of your life. You have it during when you're a bit older, you're younger. I know people who were in their 50s who've been working in corporate for like 20 plus years and then finally decide, you know what, I need a change in my lifestyle. I'm gonna go work for a startup. Of course, they're a bit more luxurious in the sense that they have a bit of money nested up and they can take a leap. And potentially, if the startup fails, it wouldn't affect them too much. But obviously, it really matters around your personal situation. And the first thing I always want to think about is that risk kind of profile. Number two is your reasons for joining. So the reason for joining, apart from money and all that, like equity and all that stuff, and the number one thing to think about is growth opportunities. So, sorry, writing on the mouse, so it's a bit weird. So growth is really important when you're joining a startup because it's where a lot of people can make their name. When you're joining or sticking to a corporate, it can take a lot of time to go up the ladder. And a lot of the times, it really depends on, for example, if someone on maternity leave or someone quit and you have the chance to take over because they can't find someone. There's a lot of situational cases like that, but in startups, it's really flat and everyone has a chance to make a name for themselves. I know a lot of people who are super young, they joined a startup and that startup is now, they just IPO'd and they made a huge name for themselves and they pretty much set themselves up for life in whatever organization or whatever field of work they're in. So a lot of the times, it's also a growth opportunity, so you have to think about that as well. So overall, just think about your personal reasons for joining and if it suits joining a startup at the time of your whatever stage of life you are. You have to think about that. That's really important as well. Okay, so the second thing is the offer. Now, obviously, this is huge. It's probably one of the most important parts of evaluating a startup offer. And a lot of it is to do with a few things. So it's a lot of base, a lot of equity, even bonuses, but I'm just going to chuck bonus out because it's probably not as big of a deal. So you're going to have to think about two things here. As I said, your base salary. So for an earlier stage startup, maybe one Series A, pre-seed and seed, you're probably going to get a lower base salary versus something like working at a corporate. The reason is pretty obvious. You're going to get probably more equity. Now, if you're at a Series B, if you're joining a Series B startup, plus or Series C, etc., you're probably expecting a base salary that's similar to probably what you're on. So if they are offering you a lot lower, like 20% plus, you're probably getting ripped off. And that's just from personal kind of advice given to me. If you're going for a Series B plus and they are giving you an offer that's a lot lower than your current base salary and they will match it, and it's a big chunk of difference, it's probably not worth it. There's a few red flags going on there, and I personally wouldn't go for an offer like that. And a lot of people apparently wouldn't do this as well. So definitely something you should think about. That gives you a bit of a guideline, but obviously you shouldn't follow exactly depending on what situation you're in. They could give you a lot of reasons. They could also make it up by equity. You never know. So obviously the second thing here is your equity, right? Now, the most important part about evaluating your equity is knowing, especially if in early stage, they can probably give you this information is what is the equity worth, right? Because a lot of times they can chuck you like, oh, we're going to give you 10,000 stock options, or we're going to give you like 100,000, but it really depends on what is it out of, right? It could be out of a lot, like $1 billion, and then that's worth pretty much jack all, right? So you have to ask the question, what is the percentage worth? And percentage, I'm going to do this simple. There. Because it's really important to know the percentage worth of your equity, because it's going to go through things like dilution, which could affect of how much you're going to get at the end of the whole journey when the company gets acquired or IPO, and how much you get a payout, right? Because to join a startup, the equity, although you shouldn't really think about it, you should also think about it. It's an ironic situation where it's important to actually understand how much your equity could potentially be worth. So for myself, I had an offer where I pretty much evaluated that unless this company IPOs and gets huge, I'm probably not going to make that much. And even if I do, the max I was making was probably just under $500,000. And that sounds like a lot, don't get me wrong. But this is evaluating the fact that it's going to take at least 10 plus years to IPO it. And by that time, I could have taken a bigger bump in another company and then build my wealth up a lot earlier. So honestly, that bunch of wealth that you're going to make over 10 years plus isn't that much, because you're probably going to make more from a base salary wise from another company, joining a corporate, for example, getting even their stock options, which might be worth a lot more because they're more mature, at least in the couple of first years. So a lot of times you have to think about how much that equity is really worth in the long-term run and if it's worth it. So those are the two main things you probably have to consider with the offer. There's a lot more other things that I'm going to go through as well, but those are the two in terms of remuneration that you should think about at least. Okay, so the third thing you should think about is your team and manager. So the reason why this is a lot more important than, say, corporate is because you're probably going to be working with these people for a very long time, and it's going to be the foundation of a team that's going to kind of build on with the startup as the startup gets mature. So a lot of times in corporate, people go to other teams, they go to a wider team, they leave the company. It's pretty it just happens. But in a startup, in my opinion, it's a lot more, people do quit, but I mean, a lot of times that team is a lot smaller and you're going to be working with that team, right? That's going to be the main team you're going to be working with. So if you don't get along with them, it's going to be detrimental to your startup's growth, as well as your experience working at the startup. So in this reason, I'm just mentioning team and manager should be really important, and you should really figure out, especially during the interview, if you get along with the manager. And it should be someone that understands what you want, especially understanding that you want career growth or what you want just working at a startup, right? And normally it's just, in my opinion, it's a gut feeling. Like a lot of the times you are going off your gut, and that's just how it is a lot of the times. And I've used my gut feeling for a lot of things, and 90% of the time it does kind of work. So if you have a gut feeling that that manager is not someone you want to work under, then maybe it's not a good reason to go into that team. But once again, this is my opinion on this. Obviously, gut feeling is a bit more abstract and up in the air, but this is how sometimes I see things, and hopefully you sometimes see things and you act with your gut feeling as well. Okay, so the last one is obvious, the startup itself, right? So the first thing I would do, show about the writing here, obviously I'm writing on a mouse, is take a look at Glassdoor, take a look at Crunchbase. Crunchbase is really good to take a look at how much funding they have, when's the last round, and it's quite important to see and kind of interpret if they have enough cash in the bank. I personally had the opportunity to get that information because I think the role I went for was a bit more senior, so the CEO is more welcoming to divulge that information towards me. But if you're going for a junior kind of role, they might not give that information to you. But you kind of put pieces together just for Crunchbase. Like if they raised a round more recently, it actually might be more safer to join the startup. Now with Glassdoor, it's important to look at the reviews. Now, especially with startups, there are probably going to be a lot less reviews. So a lot of the times you can kind of start opening up and finding out if the startup culture is really good. And if the startup it has a Glassdoor rating of like 1, it's probably not really good, right? And you probably don't want to join a startup that has that kind of culture. So a lot of times it's just looking at the startup and just having an overall lens on it. And obviously the second part is, does it have growth opportunity? Now, for me personally, I like a startup that has potential to grow worldwide. If a startup is just simply focused in their own country, I sometimes don't like that because it might not have the scalability, and you kind of just joining a startup that might just have the potential to grow and you're kind of just stuck for like a lot of years. I prefer joining a startup that has that huge potential to grow, and so if it doesn't have that, I personally wouldn't invest my time into it. But once again, it's really up to your risk appetite. For example, a lot of fintechs have to be local just because of the regulations between each country. So I personally wouldn't join one. But if you look at Robinhood, that's huge, right? And they mainly just operate in the US. So once again, it's kind of interpreting how the startup will grow. And a lot of times, it's just kind of putting few pieces together and just putting up your own assumption on how it will grow. A lot of the times, it is a hypothesis. Otherwise, every startup will get rich, right? So yeah, so that's the last thing. Take a look at the startup and just evaluate the offer. Okay, just to throw in one last point, are you excited about the opportunity? Because in the end, if you're joining a startup and you're not excited about the journey, about what they want to do, about kind of their whole mission statement, then what's the point? You don't want to join a startup just for simply trying to make a lot of money. It just doesn't work like that. You have to be excited about what they're doing. For me personally, I love software products. I love technology. So I would only join a startup that has the kind of those elements, unfortunately. I just wouldn't join a startup like a Kickstarter selling cream or something. I just wouldn't like that. It just doesn't make sense, right? So personally, I would join a startup only if you're excited about the product. It's all about the product in the end, because you have to evangelize for the product, because you're joining a startup. You're going to be one of those kind of founders. You're going to be an early stage employee, and so you have to be excited. So yeah, so that's the last point. Alright guys, thank you for tuning in. Hopefully this gives you a bit more insight around how to evaluate a job offer. Once again, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe if it really helps you, and leave a comment what other things you want to see around startups, business, marketing, even making money. I'm up for ideas. This channel is all about you, so yeah, feel free to open up your suggestions. Thanks.